Hey, welcome back to the Narleeverse. So, what does the word high school mean to all of me? All of my immediate surroundings, all of the everythings that encompasses my life, my personal little bubble, my universe, the Narleeverse. What does the word high school mean to me? Well, I have here a list of things that I would like to go over. So, firstly, when the word high school pops up in my brain, in my little head bubble there, firstly, I have 2 kids, so I have a lot to think about in the future. And even though my children are young and they won't be going to high school for quite some time, I still have a lot to think about. So, now that I've got that out of the way, I did not have a conventional education. And by that, I don't mean like I was homeschooled. I think that could have been maybe even a better alternative, but probably not when I actually think of me personally. I mean a better alternative in regard to most mental health facilities that children can go to for behavioral / education. They're basically just like most of them are like warehouses. In the education, there's much to be desired. There's a lot left to be wanted for. It's lacking. So when I was growing up, I attended the last public school I attended was in 2nd grade, and I have documentation up here on this channel from when I was 11 years old that can correspond with that. I'll have more regarding to when I was thrown out of all public schools in the county that I was growing up at in the late 90s. But I've never attended a public school that most children experience past the 2nd grade. The last public schools that I attempted as far as I know was Ware, Massachusetts, public schools for kids that are like 8, 9, 10, 11, and then the last time they tried was a Granby. I think it was in Granby. I have like vague memories of it, but I was eventually even before that I was in and out of mental hospitals. Before I was thrown out of the public schools, my mother, she really did try. She was at the schools every day. And we got involved in a lot of programs, and I was in and out of hospital schools. And then before Tri-County, when I got older, before Tri-County High School was built, there was like a Tri-County middle school. It was, they had various behavioral health facilities that were held in this church in East Hampton, Massachusetts. And I witnessed Tri-County High School being built from the ground up, brick by brick, while I was still attending a church named Tri-County. It was Tri-County Schools. It was some behavioral mental health stuff. But before that, I had been in Bay State mental health units. Like they were half like school, half like mental health stuff. They were like day programs. I had been in overnight programs. I had been in mental health hospitals for like a couple weeks at a time as an adolescent. So I had very unconventional. Well, I'm being really loud. Let me stop being loud. But do you know what you get when you cut music and art programs in schools? Mental illness. You get mental illness. The mental illness was already there. But it's awful because, dude, if I would say anything about behavioral schools and, what children have to go through when they're in these facilities, I would say don't cut the art and music programs. Like, out of all the schools, the mental ill kids. The behavioral kids need it the most. Like, don't cut it at all. Like, I believe that public schools need to maintain as many of their, I know, I never got to experience, like, later on, we had a form of a cooking class, but we didn't have a lot of the things that most high schools have. And they did their best. I enjoyed time in the computer rooms they had later on after they built it, but this video. So essentially, a lot of these programs are to see that, adolescents have some sort of trade when they reach adulthood, and it's the same as for children with behavioral and it's rehabilitation for most people, whether it's a short track or a long track. But they cut the art and the music programs when I was growing up. This was after the church school. This was after they had built what we were told was a high school. It sure didn't feel like it, but they made rooms so that they could have cooking classes and computer classes and whatnot, which I thought was great. But the art and music programs I thought were also important to keep. But first world problems, I suppose. So I really shot myself in the foot. I ended up dropping out because I thought I was going to get like a special, a SPED like certificate or something for completing it. Apparently, my mother tells me I was going to get an East Hampton high school diploma, and it would have looked like no different. But I'm sure it would have said that I attended Tri-County High School. And I had all these reasons when I was younger why I should drop out, because I was going to get my GED. And that's something I still never did, and that's something I'm very insecure about. I've attempted to get my GED 3 times now in my life throughout my 20s, and I placed very low. I have a very low opinion of my education. I believe I myself am still very uneducated and ignorant. And a lot of the things I've learned has just been through reading. I've always enjoyed libraries growing up. So I had a favorite library that I would go to. And I remember renting. So I can't remember all the books that I rented now, but I have like pictures in my head of like looking at them. And I know I didn't read as many as my father has. My father has read probably the equivalent of a couple libraries. It's really intense. But my father is very, very well read, and I spent most of my life listening to him and all of his otherworldly awesomeness. But, so most of my education I felt like came from my own, searching out naturally when humans even look for entertainment, they, which is why misinformation and a lot of things and propaganda can be so like troubling, especially a lot of conspiracies too, because not all conspiracies are cool, man. Some of them are, really messed up. So some conspiracies are pretty cool, man, but some of them are not. So, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but when humans go out to seek out entertainment, often we educate ourselves. And, I noticed in this facility, in this educational warehouse for behavioral kids and mental health that they put us in, and we were all sorts of drugged up on various things throughout most of our lives. We had all very similar stories, unlike when we left these facilities. It was very strange to think back on. When people talk about their high school memories, it is totally alien to me. I have never understood what it's like to attend a public high school. We called it a high school, but it wasn't. I think mainly a lot of the problem would lie in funding being cut, which is why it sucks so much that our president would cut funding to sanctuary cities. But at the same time, I feel I'm not going to get into politics, but I have split feelings on the matter. I kind of understand both sides of it, but it's really important not to cut funding from schools, because I think when people imagine certain things, they don't imagine like the cases where young disabled children are getting art and music cut. But I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with that anyway. But where I wanted to go with that was that it's a system, and then it's people. Because what I remember really made the experience was the people, because I enjoyed history, and I had a good history and literature teacher. I enjoyed science, had a good science teacher, and a lot of the things I didn't enjoy, it's all about like the hearts of people and shit. And it was not at all like a high school, but the few times that it did feel like it, where we felt like we actually had a class and kids weren't getting like randomly restrained and like thrown into walls, and we had like a self-contained, if you were bad, you were thrown in the room. It was a white room. They actually painted the walls white. They were big white blocks. Anyway, I'm gonna have to get into this in another video, because I have to make a short video for this video, and then I can already tell this subject is gonna go on and on. But anyway, I wanted to talk about the people versus the government, because the government doesn't always fail. I actually have never felt very patriotic in my life. I've always kind of like any young person, been a bit of an ass. But for the first time in my life, I feel like we have a pretty good country and government. But government does often fail, and when the system fails, because people, it's a machine, and people are not machines. People are, squishy, pink, loving, compassionate beings, and then we throw them into these cogs and these wheels, and we get ground up, and we wonder why the people come out all disfigured and messed up and useless, and they don't provide society with anything, not even creativity, because while they were locked up in these schools, they were drugged up for the benefit of money, funding, and they cut the art and the music, because Crazy Johnny could have turned into something, but you took away his clay, and now he's never going to make product for websites that sell appendages of giant dragons. I can't get any more into detail on that joke, because that's inappropriate. And yeah, so not that my channel is really totally appropriate, but I try. And so I've touched on, I have a lot to think about my children's future. I've touched on my unconventional education, that I was thrown out of any and all public schools, facilities, and or public schools in second grade. I was put in to the programs around that time. Again, you can look through my documentation. I'll have more of that probably someday. I have just so much to go through, like paperwork wise. Later on, watched Tri-County High School in East Hampton be built from the ground up. I have stories on what it was like to attend a lockdown mental health church place. It wasn't that bad, I've heard horror stories, some serious creepypastas on church, residential, government thing, funding, education. So I don't have the worst of the worst stories, but I have some interesting stories for you guys. And it's like I sit here, I try to piece it together, because I don't, I have a general understanding of what happened, but the more I try to remember, I think the more I realize things I didn't realize. Good job, Arlie. Basic functions of memory. Guys, this is what the word high school means to me. I think about the future, and I think about the past. I never went to high school. Never once. And I suppose one could, say how pathetic that I might admire or look up. I wonder what it would have been like. I never had a prom. We didn't even pretend to have that. We pretended to be a high school. But we didn't pretend that we ever had proms or anything. We had a little pretend basketball team. I thought that was a great thing for kids. I really did. I found a bat once, And I was very upset when they took that bat away from me. I found it behind the school when we were allowed to wander outside during recess and stuff. They took my bat away from me. It was not the first time I had wild animals taken away from me. But anyway, I've got to stop talking, man. I'm running out of... This video is just going to be so long. So long. This video is going to be so long. So long you don't even know how long. So long. Well, you do know how long because you can see on YouTube how long this video will end up being. I'll have a little... This video is like 15 minutes long. So, you know, the experiences that made it for me were the people, because there was a lot of good people that worked in these facilities, whether it be the mental health facilities or the pretend high school. And, you know, that might be offensive to a lot of people. If anybody from Blast from the Past ever finds my videos and was like, hey, I worked for this place, or I knew you, or whatever, that might be offensive to them, because I'm sure they... And again, I'm really sorry about if I offend you, but these are just my feelings. So they really are, my feelings are irrelevant. Please don't take anything too personally. My feelings are pretty irrelevant in comparison to the actual universe that the Narleeverse is a part of. I'm a part of it. Alright, so like, I'm absolutely retarded. And I'm sorry for... I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for putting you guys through this. But, you know, I do kind of feel like it was a pretend high school. And I'm sure people worked hard to make it not pretend high school. But this was the government. This was, you know, it wasn't a complete government failure. But we had just... Oh, man, it was just... I remember. Not everything, because it's just the way that I remember stuff. But I remember some messed up shit that went down. And again, you know, first world problems. But, I mean, it's not as bad as the time that I was raped or being, you know, molested as a child. You know, that's awful, and children have to go through that. But I feel some sort of way about the word high school. And it's not it's not, like I said, the most traumatizing things we could talk about. And I don't really want to talk about in detail. When I talk about traumatizing things, I sometimes really try to be careful about the detail, because I don't want my channel to be totally gross. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Peace out, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this little journey of word vlogs.